Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 495 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's show is with Hilary, and Hilary is trying to kill me. She wanted to come on the show, then she recorded this episode, and it was terrific. And then she sent me an email and said, I don't think I did a good job. Please don't let anybody hear it. And then months later sent me another email and said, I changed my mind. You could let people hear it. I was like, Hilary, I've already deleted your episode. It's gone. But I found it on a backup server. It was backed up somewhere, way, way back. And I'm delighted to bring it to you now. Please remember while you're listening, not to try to kill me, and that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Hilary, Hilary, Hilary. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. The show is also sponsored today by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. It is incredibly accurate, easy to hold, easy to use. It has a super bright light. I'm going to tell you more about it later. For now, just know this. You can find out more about it, get started, see if you're eligible for a free meter at contournext.com/juicebox. I want to give you a tiny bit of context for this episode before it starts. Hilary came on to talk about how her child eats with type 1 diabetes. It was going to be part of the How We Eat series. But when it was over, joking aside from earlier, she just felt like she didn't do a good job of explaining. But I just really loved the episode. And, you know me, a good conversation trumps everything else for me. I thought it was a great episode. She wasn't happy about it in so much as how she described their eating style. So this is not part of the How We Eat series, but it is a really great episode of the podcast. And Hilary, I forgive you for trying to kill me.
I'm Hilary. I'm married. We live in Southern California, and we have 2 children. One is 5 and one is 3.
Okay. And
Joan is a type 1 diabetic.
What do you do for a living? Because you've never used Zoom before, that's for sure.
No, I have used Zoom before. I'm not working right now, but I'm teaching kindergarten right now. So
are you really? That's
not by choice. Not by choice. I'm with
are you
my
being
son.
Forced? Oh, I thought.
Yes, I am being forced. I'm in California. I'm being forced to teach kindergarten.
I thought the state came in
awful.
and deputized you and made you a teacher or something like that.
No,
that's so. How many kids do you have in total?
2.
And
that's it forever. Just 2 forever.
I feel like that's a smart move. Which one has type 1?
Joan, she just turned 3 last week.
Wow. Okay. When was she diagnosed?
She was diagnosed when she was 11 months.
Who is she named after? Because that's a very traditional name.
Oh, she's named, we have a Joan in the family, but we just really liked it. It was hard to agree on a name. And with my son, we went back and forth, and with her, my husband said, how about Joan? I was like, yeah, let's do that.
No kidding.
It's just, and we didn't mess with it. I mean, if you agree on something, I feel like,
just
go with it.
So I need to know, if you didn't have to make this decision along with somebody else, what would Joan's names be? Did you have one picked out that he couldn't agree with and vice versa?
No. Well, he was thinking about Ruby, but I think that wasn't a name that I really liked. But no, it was just easy. We just both thought, Joan.
I think Ruby is a woman who sang in a 19 speakeasy somewhere.
Well, it's like country music. My husband really likes country music, so.
And you just married him anyway?
I did.
Yeah. You just were like, okay, I'll overlook this. Everybody can calm down if they like country music. It's fine. I'm not.
You're just joking.
I'm really just trying to say stupid stuff to loosen you up so we can start talking about the diabetes. That's really it. So how old again was she when she was diagnosed?
11 months.
11 months. That's really young. So
that's really young.
Would you describe yourself as just on the emotional edge, or are things going okay?
I would say they're going okay now, most days, but I don't think, I mean, I was actually just perusing pictures while I was waiting for you to call. And I was looking back because I couldn't remember because she's looping. I was like, I couldn't remember when she started looping. And so I was looking back at pictures and I was just seeing pictures from that time, that first year when she was really young. And my son, was just turning 4 when she had been diagnosed. And it was just really hectic and hard. I was crying like all the time.
Yeah.
And it was just, I remember driving one time somewhere and I was just like, I should not be driving. Like this is, because I hadn't slept. It was just out of control.
I think I had a life similar to yours.
What'd you say?
I said, I think my life was similar to yours back then.
Yeah. I mean, I really appreciate you being so open about like just going, you said that you went up to when your wife brought Chinese food home and you just went up to your shower and you just started crying. Cause it's like, you feel like that sometimes, just like, or you're just trying to keep it together, it was really hard, but I feel like lately, it was the first year I feel like, it took more like a year and a half, I'd say. I mean, I feel like it takes a while. I think it's going to take a long time, to get where I feel like to also get where I want to be, where I don't see a number and kind of like clench up or take like a breath, like just to, have that poker face, which I'm excited about a psychologist kind of coming on and talking about like the effects of like how to help yourself, maybe some tools with, how you're emoting,
Yeah,
even though you try not to.
I know.
I feel like you don't do that. That's why I love listening to you, because I'm like, how you can just like, you do what you need to do and then you don't think about it again. It's, to me, very inspiring, because I would love to get there. Well,
it was a process, because for quite some time, I felt like I was doing that, but my wife said that my face gave me away. That even if I could hold it in verbally, she's like, it's just coming out through your face. She said, you might as well just look at us and, say what you're thinking.
Yeah, and, I know.
I've said it on here before, but it was like a knee-jerk reaction when something didn't go the way I wanted it to. I'd say shit out loud for some reason, like just under my breath a little bit. And my wife's like, that's hard on us to hear, like her and I and everything. I was like, okay, well, I wasn't doing it I wasn't like, what I'll do? You know what my thing will be? It wasn't like, it wasn't like that. It was just like, it was like, oh, shit, because
you're thinking I messed up. I mean, you're thinking that you messed up, not anybody else. That's how I feel.
It's a compounding too. It's you feel like you screwed something up. You feel like you're hurting their health. You feel like you're messing up the next thing. You feel like you're letting them down. You feel like you're keeping them from eating, and it all just hits you at once, and you're just like, gosh, shit. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, anyway, apparently it's not good for people around me. Men who are in, what I guess you would call us, like, I don't even know how to talk about sexuality anymore. There are so many different words. Like, is there a word for when you're married to a woman and you're a man? That's a traditional. Is that traditional? I don't even know what to call that. Anyway, I think men will know that a large complaint from your spouse is usually tone, right? Because guys just don't think about that. We say what we mean. We don't mean anything more or less than that. And the tone really, you probably shouldn't even infer anything from my tone. I'm not even thinking that far ahead. But I mean, it's going to be the rest of my life trying to figure that out, because I know, just the way things are said are impactful on people. And that probably sounds crazy coming from me, because I do a good job on the podcast of talking to people the way I would perfectly like to speak to everybody. But the key is that I'm not sitting down quietly in front of a microphone having every one of my personal conversations, and I'm not centered all the time, and things are going on around you, and you're unfocused or running around or tired, and it just happens,
Yeah.
Well, I feel for you, and it sucks too, because the people around you who aren't taking on the lion's share of the responsibility don't really completely understand what it feels like either.
Yeah.
It's not great. But anyway, What is Joan using? Does she have any gear? Is she MDI? What's she doing?
She's been looping since she was 14 months. So we've been doing it for a while. And I worked with Kenny. I was like, reached out to him because on Facebook, he always chimes in. And he changed everything for us. I felt like I was about to give up because I was like, I just feel like we're not really looping. I mean, it's a big change. Okay. I have to back up.
Go ahead.
When we first started, it was like, my husband described it as like, we've been living without running water and it's like turned on now. Like we have water because it just felt like you have a safety net. Like, someone's already working on it. Or like Jenny said, the little or did you want the gremlins? Anyway, someone said something about little gremlins cleaning up and like taking care of stuff, while you can go about your life. So, I feel like it's taking care of the highs and lows, but my settings weren't right. And they weren't completely off, but, like for me, I started like fidgeting and then I'd fidget a little more and then with something else. And then by the time it was, a year later, I just felt like, gosh, I still am not grooving with it, all the way. It would help, but not as much as other people I would see out there.
Yeah.
So that's when I reached out to Kenny and I said, can you help me? And he lives in Southern California. So we got together and, man, he
really
knows what
understands
he's doing.
Yeah.
It's insane. I'm like, you're like a wizard. So, that helped. And now I feel, it really works, and he also has so many good, videos now on the SoCal Loopers page and the, like the videos that he's done where he explains Night Scout and really goes through everything. And it's really helpful.
He's going to come back on soon.
I'm glad that he is, because I just find that he's who I've gotten so much from, and he's been great.
So it really is interesting, for people who don't loop or use some sort of an algorithm. There's a number of settings, and if those settings aren't correct, it just doesn't work very well. And you can also get the settings close enough that it works well away from food, but near food, it's kind of a disaster.
Or one setting could be making up for another. So in some situations, it's working really well half the time, but the other half, it doesn't work well, which I think was what was happening with us. But we did one basal rate, which I think I had like maybe 6 or 7 basal rates.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because on a traditional pump, I remember when Joan was first diagnosed and we'd done the Omnipod and T-Slim. We tried a few different ones and now we're on Medtronic because of looping. They didn't have the Omnipod when we first started doing it anyways. But with the T-Slim, we would call and she would, the nurse would say, adjust this, change your basal rate. Oh, it sounds like you need to step down your basal rate. And so I had all these different ones. And until Kenny said, you just need one, especially with anything, I don't know. But it just smoothed things out.
Yeah. I agree that we're basically a 2 basal rate situation. There's a slightly lower one overnight than there is during the day. And someone like Kenny who can see the real mathematical cause and effect of things, it's fascinating to me that he can look and say,
me too.
This is happening. So that means that this is too great. But then he can look at the other setting and say, well, if you make this one weaker, that one has to be stronger, vice versa. Like he just knows. And it's funny. I know now, like I can look at the settings and just change them, but I don't have any of the cognitive thoughts that he has to get to it. I don't even know how to do that. I just know that knob is going to make this happen and that knob's going to make this happen.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting what he said about X-Strip, that he used that for MDI and that he had even tighter control just looking at the data coming back from that. I'm like, how are you doing this?
He really does understand. Yeah. And I've said it before and I've said it to him too, that he also has a younger child and as do you. And so we tried the just like his idea for just one basal rate and it worked great away from hormones. And then when hormones existed, his settings were useless. Like they wouldn't work. So that
totally makes sense.
I now think of Arden as like 3 different people.
Yeah.
And that fixed it. I didn't fight it. Like I hear people say all the time, like you can't figure out like hormones. And talking about periods pretty specifically. And I just decided one day, I'm like, she's one kind of person in this space. She's one kind of a person in this week, and this week she's a different person. And so her needs are different. I'll meet her needs. And then the next thing you have to do is figure out, like, when does it happen? So after a couple of weeks, you just see it like, oh, okay, when this starts to drift up, these are the settings. And when it begins to drift lower, then you go back to the other ones, and you get a little more aggressive with meal boluses for Arden, it's the handful of days before the actual event begins. Which I say that way because in my mind wants me to say before she bleeds, and I'm pretty sure that's completely insensitive and incorrect. So I end up saying the event or something like that.
The event.
Yeah. Whenever Mazel Tov happens. It really is interesting. But how are the outcomes now that you're all set up?
I mean, I feel like we're good. We just kind of, I mean, there's days when she spikes and, I just kind of take care of that, but I feel like her carb count, everything's, right. And, I try to keep her under 130. I mean, usually if I see a 130, I'm going to bolus. And I feel like we sometimes maybe have a little bit more like feed insulin a lot, but I'd rather she snacks so much. I mean, she's always eating, I feel like. So I know there's going to be a meal coming up anyway. So I would rather just make sure that there isn't a spike, even if I think it'll probably slow down, because she's so young and I have complete control because she's with me all the time. So I just think I give her the best care I can right now.
While you can.
Yeah. I do feel like Loop does a good job. I'm not just going to leave it to Loop to knock down something that if I mistimed something, which I feel like happens all the time. I don't know how you do it. I feel like with the lunch that you give Arden, and then you can just extend, like put in Loop what it should do. And it keeps like all of it comes in and works at the right time. Like, I just feel like that's so hard to do.
You're just basically fooling it into being in ludicrous mode the entire time the food's active, just keeping everything turned up, meaning that there's real active bolus and real active basal, and it's just happening. It's just fighting. I think of it as two flamethrowers in a cartoon hitting each other. There's pictures that pop up into my head. And so the food's just trying to, it's trying to get to the other side, and you're just trying to stop it. So you meet force with force is how I think of it. And you do that with, different absorption times. Just telling
what absorption times are you putting in? Are you doing, cause I do she'll eat like fruit and some sort of like meat, cheese things. But the fruit I thought that the fruit would hit like all really fast, but sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes I over bolus up front was what I was noticing was happening. And then she would go kind of too low and then it would cut off basal. So I started splitting the bolus, but I still feel like that's not really right either. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I feel like the timing is still confusing to me. And I don't know if it's because of other food she's eaten, because there's not much time between meals. It's like 2 hours between meals.
I do find that it's incredibly easy to overpower simple sugar. And even if it's there count wise, it might not need the same power. If that makes any sense. I mean, so I'm trying to pull this up right now so I can look for an example. So about a half an hour before you and I began, we decided to change Arden's pump, and she had been sitting on her CGM oddly, and nobody noticed. So she didn't have a signal for like a half an hour or so. So the loop's now not engaged, and her blood sugar's going up, and there's no loop. So she gets this like 190 blood sugar that just none of us notice right away. So now it's a 190 blood sugar. It's time to change the pump. So we put on a new pump, make a little bit of a bolus. She announces she's going to eat something. And I said, well, I have to go upstairs. So just bolus 10 carbs now and then figure out what you're going to do and put the rest of it in. I don't know what else am I going to do? And then I get a text message a little while ago, what is now about 40 minutes ago now. And the text message just says, I'm having a baked potato and reheated macaroni and cheese.
No.
I was like, that's great. You should sprinkle some rice over top of it and sugar, because that rice has no flavor. And so I said, okay. So what I did was 80 carbs, 40 carbs for 4 hours, 40 carbs for 3 hours. And I opened the loop because I don't even want to mess with it, because it's a new it's a new pump site, and I don't know how well it's going to work or not. So I don't want to get into the intricacies of basal rates being taken away right now. Right now, I just want insulin, and that's where we are. She's 187, so I think she's
how
doing good.
often do you open the loop a day?
No,
Are you doing it every day?
No.
Okay. I never open the loop. I never do it. But maybe I should if I get into a situation.
So
like yesterday, Joan's blood sugar went really high, and I think it was adrenaline, and it was just up, and then it finally came down. But I mean, I bolus. She's on diluted insulin. So it's U25, so 25% of 1 unit. And I mean, I gave her 6 units, and it finally came down. It was so bizarre.
Well,
it was almost like she was getting sick kind of, amount. Cause I usually don't have to give her, it would be, just a couple units if she was like at 180 to get her back in range.
I hear you. I have I have a concept about high blood sugars, and it's something I use in my own life, but it started as kind of a teaching tool, I guess, while I was talking to people. And, it's nice if you have time to listen to the podcast, it'll come to you. All right. You know what I mean?
Scott, wait, I've listened to every single episode.
Okay.
Every single episode, and many several times. I love your podcast. I'm like probably your biggest fan, I think.
Oh, thank you.
I absolutely love it. And I tell everybody about it. I've told our Indo about it. I just think it's the best thing, because it's taught me. I can't believe they let people go out of the hospitals without giving them like some direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And without finding your podcast, I mean, I'd be in the weeds.
Oh, that's very nice. You didn't have to say that, although I'm glad you did. And because it makes me feel good, and it gives a nice break in the conversation where I can put the ads. Gvoke HypoPen has no visible needle and is the first pre-mixed auto-injector of glucagon for very low blood sugar in adults and kids with diabetes, ages 2 and above. Not only is Gvoke HypoPen simple to administer, but it's simple to learn more about. All you have to do is go to GvokeGlucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used in patients with insulinoma or pheochromocytoma. Visit GvokeGlucagon.com/risk. Do you or someone you love have diabetes and find yourself checking your blood sugar? You know what I mean? Like a little finger poke and a squeeze, 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 and a dip, 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 and then a beep, beep, and then number. That, if you do, you should be using a good meter. Maybe a great meter. Maybe an amazing meter. Why do you have a bad one? Wait, do you have a bad one? You don't even know, do you? You've never even looked into your meter. Oh, that's okay. A lot of us haven't. Luckily for you, I took care of that. I got the podcast set up with the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. It is super accurate, easy to handle, easy to use, easy to see at night. And it has second chance test strips that stop your strips from being wasted if you miss the blood the first time. You know when you get some blood but not enough and you have to go back? That's your second chance. The Contour Next One blood glucose meter allows second chances. And it doesn't hurt the accuracy of the test if you have to go back in to get more. So you're not wasting strips, you're getting a great number, and you're doing it with a it's a hip little meter. I was going to call it like stylish, but I don't know how stylish a meter can be. I can tell you this, it fits great in your hand. It's easy to use. It's easy to put in your pocket, your bag, your purse, wherever you carry your diabetes supplies. And it just flat out works. It also may be cheaper in cash, like out of your pocket, than you're paying for your meter now through your insurance company. I'm not sure, but that's possible. And you can look into that at contournext.com/juicebox. There you can find out everything about the meter, the company, the test strips, see the cash price, find out if you're eligible for a free meter. It is a comprehensive website, well worth the couple of minutes you're going to spend looking around it when you get done listening to this episode. That's a lot of confidence from me, isn't it? Right? I'm like, you're going to go look at this thing. I have to tell you, I sometimes look at the site and I think, who put this together? There's so much good information here. Well done, I think. And then I clap my hands lightly as if I'm at the opera. contournext.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. Support the sponsors, support the show. Let's get back to Hilary and how she tortured me and then told me to get rid of the episode. Delete it, just kill it. Like, it's like one of my children in these episodes and she just wants it gone. Wasn't that easy, Hilary? To just give it away like that. I have feelings. She's just like, hey, just get rid of the episode. No big deal. Just go. I'm teasing Hilary. I really like her. Let's get back to the show. What I was going to say is, before you were so kind, is that when I'm talking to people who have not listened to the podcast the way you have, right, who are coming into it in full freak out mode, so I see it a lot on the Facebook page. Like some people are just like, hey, I'm here to listen to the podcast. And then they do it, which is really cool. As a matter of fact, the podcast just had its best month ever. And I
saw that. That's great.
This month had more downloads than the first 2 years of the podcast combined.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is awesome.
Yes. So I appreciate you telling people because the word is definitely getting around. But anyway, sometimes you get these people and they don't have all the ideas and they still are having such bad outcomes that you want to try to get them somewhere stable to start over, right?
Yeah.
So I have an idea about high blood sugars. The way I think about a really high blood sugar is crush it, stop it, get it stable. Because if you crush it, it's going to fall. And you have to stop that drop without causing another high because because you have to. Right. So, so it's crush it, stop it, get it stable. That's it. And I employ that for my own mistakes because I think it's almost impossible for most people to disembark the roller coaster while it's moving. I can do it, and I'm sure you'll be able to do it at some point, people listening. But when you're first starting out, to turn a 250, into an 80 during a meal is a Ninja Plus level move. And I can do it. I could bolus for a 200, give my kid a baked potato and macaroni and cheese, not be in the room, not count the carbs, not weigh the potato, and end up at a good blood sugar. But most people can't. What they need is stability to start over with. And so when that happens on loop, I just use the same concept, but you have to open the loop to do that so it doesn't take away the basal.
I wonder if that was the issue because I'm also I feel like Kenny's always said, don't trick Luke, don't tell it you're doing, don't put in fake carbs, things like that. And so I'm like, I'm not going to be a fake carber. And so I think, but also it's like the nature of diabetes. Sometimes you're like, this takes this amount of insulin. And I feel like sometimes I just beat my head up. Like yesterday I was like, well, it doesn't take this much. It takes this much, after you've done it a few times, you think
well,
what you know, which is something you say, but then yesterday it didn't work. It was weird. I don't know.
Well, that's not fake carbing though. That's addressing glycemic load of a food, right? So there can be I know that at some point people are going to be like, please stop saying this, but it's really important and nobody pays attention to it. So, you can get 10 carbs worth of baked potato and 10 carbs worth of, I usually say watermelon because they're pretty diametrically opposed, right? Mm-hmm. And those two things are going to impact your blood sugar differently. So whatever ratio you have set up for, say you're 1 unit per 10 carbs, that 1 unit might handle that watermelon perfectly. It may, in fact, handle a number of foods perfectly if you actually had 10 carbs of it. It doesn't mean it's going to work on the baked potato. Yeah. So if you know that the baked potato needs the insulin equivalent of 15 carbs, that's not fake carbing. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not lying about carbs. That's being honest about need.
Right.
Which is, and I don't even think that's splitting hairs. I just think that's a setting that that pumps and algorithms don't have,
Right. I wish that they did.
Well, one day they might, but for now they don't.
Yeah.
For sure. But anyway, that's what I like to do. And so instead of the old fashioned way, prior to an algorithm of crush it, stop it, get it stable, I do with a loop, I do crush it, figure out exactly when to turn the loop back on, let it get stable on its own.
See, I should have done that. I never open the loop. Like I said, I never do it. And I probably, because I'm trying, I probably should have yesterday.
And it's a different spot for everybody, I would imagine, but Arden's about 140 diagonal down. If you re-engage the loop right about there, it gives it enough time to catch it.
Oh, that's good.
For most of her high. Okay. And keeping in mind, too, this is important, I think. Most of Arden's highs don't go much over 200. So it's not like but it's still a fair amount of insulin, that I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, anything over 120, I feel like it gets a tax,
What do you feel like when it's over 120?
It gets a tax, it gets because it's insulin it's over one. It's like so easy to bump and nudge. Like you always say, if you're, in a really nice range, it doesn't take much insulin, but once it starts creeping up, it just takes more and more and more.
Yep. The higher you get, see, people think of it as you're insulin resistant, but I prefer to think of it as it's a number you just didn't hit correctly. So now you have a deficit.
Oh,
so
okay.
I think of it as a deficit of insulin. Some people call it insulin resistance. I don't know that they don't, in theory and function, mean the same thing, but
right.
It's just the way I prefer to think about it. It's the way that it works in my brain, to be perfectly honest with you. I just want to understand what I'm doing. Yeah. So you're on to talk about low carb eating, aren't you?
I am.
Oh.
Low-ish carb, not extremely low.
You're lowish.
Lowish.
It only took me a half an hour to get to it. I'm really getting good at this podcasting thing, but I was enjoying our conversation. Wait till people who tune in, because this one's going to be called How We Eat Lowish Carb. And then people are going to listen to us talk about stuff for a half an hour, and then we're going to start talking about carbs, and I'm like, this could have been up front. And to you, I say, tricked you. You're still listening. No, I'm just kidding. I like having a nice conversation first, so we know kind of what your situation is and put people in a mindset.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the situation was that she was diagnosed so young too, so that was part of the low carb approach, was that in the hospital, they were like, she needs to eat, I think they told me 50 carbs per meal. And I was like, okay.
When she was 3, they told you that?
And then I put together a meal, and I was like, how is she going to eat this? She was also she had, because she got sick, she had RSV at 6 months. And I noticed sort of that she kept on getting sick and different illnesses, a lot of ear infections. And so that,
what is RSV? Because I thought of Ruth Bader Ginsburg when you said that. I was like, wait, what did she say?
RSV. It's like a respiratory infection that babies get sometimes. They end up in the hospital. So I think that's kind of what triggered things, because after that, it was just like a slow decline of just her getting, take her to the doctor. Oh, I don't, she's just an ear infection. Okay. And then finally I took her in that last month every single week. And I was like, something's wrong with her. And then she finally saw her pediatrician, but she was in DKA at that point and had thrown up that day, she was, instead of 19 pounds, she was 17 pounds. And it was just
those are Arden's
obvious.
exactly. Those are Arden's exact weights: 19 pounds, 17.
I
coming
know.
out of the
I've
hospital.
heard you say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
And it was funny because I don't know if it's funny now when we were, in the hospital, when we were in the doctor's office, they did the meter. The nurse, gave her a blood check and it just said, high on it. And I was like, as you thought, oh, that's so nice. It says hi to you,
Yeah.
So that made me laugh when you said that, because I thought the same thing. I was like, what a great, little instrument.
Yeah. Only older people would have that thought who had really crappy electronics as a child. Just like, oh, look, it comes on. It says hello. This is lovely.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But gotcha. They told me, so we went to the hospital after that, obviously. And then, but they were like, yeah, give her, I think it was like 30 to 50 carbs per meal, but I remember it was a lot. It felt like a lot. And, we live in California. I eat pretty healthy. We didn't really, I don't know. It just was, I think that's just how we ended up there. Cause I was giving her, luckily she was undiluted, and that made a huge difference. I felt like with just the not having a ton of lows and highs, but she was on, the Levemir at night, which was, she would have, lows at night. It was tricky when everything first started, but it felt like, well, if we can kind of do small meals, do like 15 carbs per meals and snacks throughout the day, then that kind of makes my life easier. In turn, makes me happier and my family happier. So that's kind of how we got there.
All right. So I have like a layered question here, but first I want to point out that you said, we live in California, so we eat healthy, which is why a lot of people don't like people from California. In case you're wondering, you're like, obviously I'm a healthy person. I live in California.
Well, I just meant there's a lot of options. I'm in Texas right now, actually, because we're escaping the fires. So we drove here with me and my kids and my husband drove to Texas. That's where we're from.
Okay. Because you're totally not from California. You said a word early on, and it made me think to ask you where you were from originally. I made a note to ask where you were from originally. Now I can't remember what word triggered me, but where in Texas? Whereabouts? Not exactly where, because people will come and find you.
Dallas area.
I'll tell you, Texas is, I'm leaning on my wife about Texas because I feel like I could find no snow and no humidity somewhere in Texas.
No, it's so humid here.
Everywhere? What about Austin?
I don't know, man. It's very buggy. There's so many bugs here too. And I'm not scared of bugs. I don't mind bugs, but I came back and my ankles, like everything's eaten up by mosquitoes.
You're ruining
it's very buggy.
All right, well, let me just believe this exists, because as I get older, I don't want snow and I don't want humidity. These are my goals. They're very small goals.
Sounds like the West Coast. Why don't you go to New Mexico or Arizona?
Yeah, I don't know.
Everybody loves you in Salt Lake City, right?
I'm huge in Utah.
I know.
I'm sure I could be the next leader of the church if I tried. I'm serious. I don't know if that was insensitive, and if it was, I apologize, but I think it's true.
They like you there.
It just
a
keeps
lot.
happening.
It's beautiful too. I've only driven through, but it looks amazing.
Someone sent me, someone from Utah heard me say this and sent me a town. They're like, go here. And I looked online and I was like, I'll be damned. I would like to live there. It was just really beautiful,
Yeah.
Anyway, so, okay. What I was going to say is, you're kind of interesting because of the timing of Joan's diagnosis in history. But you're almost like a person who, 10 years from now is gonna, you'll meet somebody who bought a car that runs on gasoline, and you'll be like, oh my God, wow, where'd you get that? And your kid had diabetes for 3 months, and you put her on an algorithm.
Yeah.
And was she lower carb that whole time?
Wait, it was more than 3 months, because we did some things before. She was diagnosed at 11 months.
You did some things like you robbed the bank? What are we talking about? You did some things.
No, wait, I'm thinking maybe she was 17 months then, but it said 14. I looked at my pictures. And it said 14
whole
months.
Conversation has been a lie.
I can't believe it. No, but I looked back at my pictures and it said it was 14 months. It was in February. So yeah, it was really quick after.
Maybe your computer doesn't know what month it is, but that's not the point. The point is quickly.
No, we didn't do MDIs very long at all.
But you also didn't just go to a pump.
We
you
also
went to an
left
algorithm.
she got the G6 Also, when we left the hospital, she had a Dexcom. She was wearing one.
You're from California.
I wouldn't say that everybody leaves with a Dexcom from California.
Hey, don't ruin my joke. Hilary, do not ruin my joke. I set that joke up masterfully.
Sorry.
No, okay. I mean, honestly, cut me a break, okay? Let me have it. No, but that's so far. How did you talk them into a Dexcom? How did you even know to ask for one?
My husband, when she was diagnosed, just like, he's like, he just wanted to figure out the best things that we could get for her. And he's like, we need to get a pump. We need to get a Dexcom. He's like, I like the Omnipod. He was just had it all figured out. And I was in the hospital, just like not able to talk, pretty much like laying in the bed with Joan,
Yeah.
So he figured it all out. And he's like the tech guy,
right.
That he does like all the research and all the stuff that we need to, he set up our loop. And then I do the settings, which I think, it's usually one person said, I don't know, a lot of people I know, because it's a lot to take on setting it up. Well, I mean, people do it, but for me, it seems like a lot.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing still. Like they're like right now, people are like, oh, there's a new version of the loop, and you have to rebuild Night Scout or something. I'm like,
no, thank you.
I'm not doing that. Do I have to? I mean, it's still working. Do I have to do it?
I know.
And know when I'll do it, by the way, is when I force Kenny to help me with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or anyone else. I'll just go online and I'll exchange some of my goodwill for help, because I'm really confused by all that stuff.
Me too.
It's not dissimilar, by the way, than how I make adjustments on pumps. I just know turn that knob or click that box. Like I can get through the setup, but I have no tangible idea what I'm doing.
Right.
I just know where to click. I must be infuriating to people whose minds work differently. But it's the best I can do. It really is terrible. So what does lowish carb mean?
Well, for me, it's just like, I'll give her, we'll try things, I'm definitely, if we're, out and somebody has brought something to the park, well, not these days, but maybe in the future, we'll always experiment with stuff. But I mean, when we're eating around the house, it's just, as many lower carb options is sort of what I'm offering. And then I do like to make sure she gets, 10 to 15 carbohydrates, at least with the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then snacks also if she wants. So it's like for breakfast, she had yogurt and berries, but the yogurt was sort of like a more high protein yogurt, which is not easy to bolus for, because you have, for me, because she is low, like we all kind of eat lower carbs. She, especially with her being little, like she's like a little kid, her body can produce ketones, right? So I don't want her to ever have high ketones because of her diet. So that's why I make sure that we check ketones, that she's getting enough carbohydrates to kind of flush them out too.
So you're trying,
and then she's also getting a lot of protein.
Jenny explained this to me one time. So there are ketones that come from eating and ketones that come from not enough insulin. They're not the same thing. And they don't, and ketones might be the wrong word, because I remember complaining during that episode that there were so many words that sounded like each other that meant something different. So you're just trying to avoid it more because she's such a tiny person. It leads to weight loss too, right? Like, right.
Yeah.
Looking for
which
that.
She hasn't had. She's only been gaining weight, and she's like, I don't know, 80th or 70th percentile, which she's always been. So we eat a lot of, so she eats like yogurt, berries for breakfast, or like I get this like low carb bread called Sola, and it like with Walden Farms jam on it in the morning, or she'll eat bacon with fruit, like usually berries or apples with like walnut butter. She also has some allergy stuff going on where she's allergic to eggs and to soy and almonds. So it's been tricky, like just with some foods that she can't eat. But we do a lot of nuts though, even though she's allergic to almonds. And we do a lot of nuts for snacks. And
what about lunches?
Lunches, sometimes like just leftovers from the night before. If it's like chicken and vegetables, she'll eat the chicken. She's like a little kid. So I try to offer vegetables to my children, but they almost never eat them. Salami is pretty easy. Cheeses. She loves Lily's chocolate. I know they were a sponsor. At some point, are you still
They
being sponsored
are in the
by
middle
them?
of a switchover at the company, and then we're going to get back on track. Yeah,
Okay. Cause I'm also obsessed with the chocolate. Like we buy so much Lily's chocolate.
Yeah.
Cause it's like olives and Lily's chocolate are like the two things I do not have to bolus for. Everything else I have to definitely give her insulin for. I make waffles out of, out of, alternative sort of nut flours and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot pretty much, and especially with like the keto craze and people like thinking, doing like low carb diets. I feel like it's so much stuff now you can buy. But for me, it's just easier to do like lots of different fish and meats and offer those. And there's this stuff called moon cheese and like the Parmesan cracker kind of things. But I mean, if she wants other stuff and we're out, I'll also do that. It's just,
she's a lot of
easier
choices,
day to day.
Yeah.
With also I have a 5-year-old, trying to wrangle them and all that. I just feel like it was putting in so much insulin and getting the timing right and not getting like, forgetting this or that. It just felt like a lot of pressure and stress.
So can I ask you, is the lowish carb diet an actual decision about nutrition, or is it more about making bolusing easier and the rest of the family just went along with it?
I feel like it's both, because I always have sort of always kind of ate this way anyways. We didn't eat a lot of bread. But my husband did. He was like eating pizza and all kinds of stuff, and he always has. But ever since Joan was diagnosed, he stopped eating all of that kind of stuff, and he only eats like meat and vegetables now.
Do you believe that during the day when he's not at home, he's just sitting in his car?
I do. He found also the Rebel ice cream. So that's like his thing. He'll have like a pint of Rebel ice cream at night, which Joan also can have, which is very cool. But I just feel like there's so many alternatives, and like right now that it's easy enough
to
right
stay
now
on the lower
side.
Just to stay on the lower side of carbs.
Yeah, because then, we can just like go to the beach and I don't have to worry about how much insulin she has on board. And I have friends who, it's just, I see the other side and I feel like, gosh, that looks stressful, because when we're at the park, the most units she has on is maybe 3. And that's, so that's really only 0.75 because it's diluted,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes it's more, but it's where I could give her 1 carb and she would be back at where she's supposed to be, so, and I don't get the spikes and the drops. And so I feel like for right now, her being so little and us just all being together as a family for the most of our days, it's especially in quarantine right now.
Yeah. You don't need extra things to be worried about or anything like that. And by the way, not that you need my approval, but it sounds completely reasonable to me. And it sounds like it's working really well. So, I mean, do you think there'll be a time where if she were to come to you and say like, look, lady, I had pizza at a party and I don't know what to tell you, but I want more of it. Do you think that you'd be able to handle bolusing it? Or do you feel like, so I guess what I'm saying is that being lower carb for managing insulin, it strikes me like it's sort of like setting the video game to beginner, so that it just, everything's a little more forgiving as you're going, which is terrific. It's an amazing idea, obviously. My question isn't, do you think you can sustain this? I don't think like that, but like, say it happens, say she's just like, I'm going to eat this now. You'd need some practice, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think with I bolused for pizza before, and one time it was great. Another time it wasn't. Another time it was good. So it's like, everything just takes practice.
Right.
But I think because she's so little, like right now it's just easier if she's not asking for something, then to just do low carb. But if she does ask for something, then I certainly want her to be able to try it. And,
Yeah.
But, we went out to dumplings the other day. Like when I say the other day, it was probably a year ago because we've been inside with each other for 6 months now. But, and I thought she'd be totally into them. And she like picked up one dumpling when we finally got our food and she was just like, ew. And she only ate the meat inside. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you fooled me. You know what I mean?
That kid needs a fresh piece of white toast with some butter on it and a little bit of sea salt sprinkled over top.
I use these for if I do give her food that she doesn't eat. I have these date bars with cashews in them. They're just dates and cashews and they're so good. They're so easy to bolus for. And they're like 30 carbs for one bar, I think, or maybe they're what brand is that? I can't remember what brand it is, but they're just dates and cashew. So I split one in half and that's 15 carbs. So if it's like we missed something, she doesn't want it. It's there you go. And it's so steady and easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when she gets older, I have friends who like this one mom said they were even like very low carb. I don't know if they used our insulin, but they were very low carb. And when her son was diagnosed when he was really young, and then he got older and he wanted to have pizza and go out with his friends and have burgers and things like that. So she, he does that now and they kind of work together and do their best, but
I say whatever works.
I mean, the thing is, it's kind of, for me, I think of it in like chunks of time of like, okay, for the next year, what are we going to be doing? And it's just so much easier the day to day to not have to, but I wouldn't like it if she was upset that someone was eating something and she wasn't. I wouldn't want that situation at all. So if that was the situation, then I would say, okay, you want to try that, let's do it.
Hey, it's very possible that it'll never happen to her. She might just be very happy with how she eats and that'll be that. And
we've been out and she definitely has done that. So
gotcha.
But it's okay. It's okay. Like the thing is that we eat like this at home. And so when we are out and if things go sideways, I don't feel like, I just think of the day to day of it would be for her age and for me. And like you said, this is like almost like the setting it on a computer game to the beginning level, because I am a beginner. I've only been, she was diagnosed at 11 months and she just turned 3. So we haven't been at it this long. So I feel like it works great for that. And there's just so many options, Yeah,
no, there obviously is a ton of things that you can buy and that taste better than anything has in the past, etc. I was going to say that, yesterday, an episode went up with a mom of a really young kid with diabetes, and she just threw herself into understanding how to bolus for regular foods. And she sends me something on Instagram every day, and it's the food that the kid eats and the kid's graph. And she's a rock star. Her name's Tori, and she's amazing at it. And I just wonder, like, I would love for her to like. I'm having this daydream where you like babysit her kid for a while and she babysits yours for a while, and I see what happens.
Don't make me do that.
No, they're on the East Coast, so you'd have to FedEx them, and I think that's illegal. So, and I don't know why it should be, but I think it definitely. By the way, if anyone's listening, I think it's illegal to ship somebody in a box, but especially children, you'd think. The point is that she somehow figured it out, and I don't know. Like, you both listen to the podcast. So like, I'm just fascinated by that. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I genuinely mean it when I tell you, I don't care how anyone eats. And I'm going to end up saying this sentence probably on every episode of How We Eat, but I just want people to understand how to use insulin. And from there, they can do it with whatever they want. And it sounds like you understand it really well. Now it's just when you add more carbs, it's harder for you. And there's something in there, like you're not bolusing enough, or you're botching the timing or something like that, but it's doable. It's just not, it's not necessary. I'm not arguing for or against any of the ideas of how people eat. I just interviewed a guy yesterday that was a vegan, and not for moral reasons, just he eats vegan, and it's better for his body and he feels better. And I think that's cool. I actually think whatever people do that works for them is really great. I just want to sort of give voice to all the conversations. So, yeah.
I think that that's what I appreciate about your podcast is I don't feel like you have an agenda and you are genuinely just interested in people and their journeys. And I think in the type 1 community, sometimes I get nervous about talking to friends on either side because it feels like there is like a divide or a stance that you have to take. And for me, you know, even saying like we're low carb, like it feels a little bit like you're going to be judged.
You're not low. You're like you wouldn't be low carb enough.
Oh no. I think either way, yes.
Yeah,
in a way, yeah. Right. I do feel like, and that's why I said low carb-ish because I didn't want someone to think that I was, you know, representing because I'm not, you know. But it seems like just for me, it just makes sense to do what works for you. But I do think that's an interesting point that you bring up about the timing and that someone is doing it who has little kid. And sometimes I wonder, like, am I like scared? Because sometimes recently you asked somebody that, like, are you just scared to give that amount of insulin? And I was like, that's a good question for me to ask myself. Am I just scared, you know, of giving that much insulin? Or am I just trying to make it easier in my day-to-day life? Because if I give that amount of insulin, it seems like I would have to try it like at least 7 times, I think, to get things right. But I feel like the little kids, she's always eating, and it's so hard to like really get a good idea of, did you get the bolus right or not? You know?
Mm-hmm. I hear you. So what's the answer?
I don't know.
Do you want to sit here and think about it for a second?
No, I don't know. What do you think you know?
Yeah, of course I know. It's a mix of both. It started out because you were not having success, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And then it became easy, and now it's easy. And the further away from doing it you get, the harder it seems. Is that about right?
I think it is.
Yeah. I'm almost a genius.
Wow,
I could just understand.
That's good, Scott.
I barely understand anything, Hilary, just so everyone listening understands. I'm good at watching people and knowing how to use insulin. Other than that, it's pretty much a mixed bag after that. But no, I would imagine that that's it based on what I've seen, you know, countless other people go through. I can tell you right now, if I come down to Texas and get my ankles bit a little bit, we can give Joan whatever she wants to eat, and I'll bolus you for it, and we'll be all right.
We're going to be in California, Scott. I'm not staying in Texas.
I wasn't coming to Texas, just so you know. It was more of a hypothetical, but I could do it. I also wonder too, how much does she weigh again?
31 pounds.
How come you're still diluting the insulin?
We plan to dilute until she's, I think, 4 or 5 is what the endo said.
No. I don't understand.
I think it's just you get tight. I mean, for me, it seems like tighter control because you don't have to. I mean, sometimes I wonder. I don't know. I mean, her basal rates are, you know, some of them are, you know, so little.
Yeah, how little? How small?
Like 0.25.
Yeah, but that's because, what would it be if it wasn't diluted?
I don't think you could get it small enough, right?
Well,
because it's 1 unit is 0.25.
That doesn't make sense. It's 0.25 diluted, but she weighs 30 pounds.
Let me look at what her settings are.
What's her A1C? Would you tell me that?
Yeah, it's a 5.5.
I mean, it's working. I wouldn't change it if it's working, but obviously, I would just think at 30 pounds she could handle 0.2 of regular at a regular strength.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's experiment on your kid and find. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that's the only way to do it. That's the weird thing about type 1. It's like, I remember when we first started, I'm like, you know, can you tell me how much and then you realize it's all just, you just experiment and see what happens, you know? I mean, nothing really bad.
No.
If you're just trying things and poking around and not, you know, being too crazy. Nothing's going to happen. The reason it's striking me is because I just released a person into the wild who I was helping privately, and their kid was like 3 years old,
and weighed like 40 pounds or something like that. And the kid needed it ended up needing it. I don't mean it insultingly. The kid and it, I just said in the same sentence. I'm just trying to avoid saying him so I don't out anybody. And instead I'm just being terrible. I'm like that thing that we were talking about. Anyway, the boy, he's getting like a half a unit an hour.
Okay, so her basal rate for the whole day is 4.8. Hold
on. And that's diluted.
Yeah. Sorry I don't have this info. I don't have her phone on me.
You're fine. You don't have to.
I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I thought we were talking about food.
We are talking about food. So she's getting 0.2 an hour of diluted insulin.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. So that's probably...
So you can't get it tiny
and what's the dilution? How do you do one part to what? One part...
It's called diluent. So it's... I think some people use saline and then some people use diluent with different kinds of insulin.
But is it like a certain parts of insulin to a certain parts of the diluent?
Yeah, yeah.
What is it? How many parts to what?
It's so. What do you mean? How many parts?
How do you mix it? How do you do somebody mix it for you, or do you mix it yourself?
I mix it. Yeah.
Tell me how you mix it. Is what I'm saying.
You want me to take you through how I mix it? No. I take out 250 units of insulin.
Right.
And then I put in 250 units of sorry, my kids are now walking into the room.
Tell them we're doing something very important.
Watch a show.
Yeah.
You can watch a show.
Tell them to find some pornography on their phone or something and leave us alone. So it's half and half. Basically, you're halving it. So 0.2 of this is equal to 0.1, I'm guessing, of regular strength. And your pump will do that.
Yeah. We're on the Medtronic.
Yeah. Your pump
So you think that we should move to just not diluting anymore?
Well, keeping in mind that I'm a dumbass from New Jersey who just bought a microphone and has an idea of how to get his voice onto the internet. I mean, I don't know.
What do you think will happen if we don't dilute? Why will that be better?
I just think you'd have more control over the insulin.
Really?
But I might be wrong.
Do you feel like the diluting is making it like
diluted?
Yeah, diluted. I was thinking that it was making it not like precise or something. That's what I fear, is that, because one little drop can make such a big difference, you know?
So keeping in mind that what I know about this could fit into a thimble, I mean, that seems reasonable to me, but I could be 100% wrong. But I would try it for fun one day. I could tell you.
I'm not going to try that.
I would make her basal rate 0.1, use like full strength insulin and see what happens.
That's interesting. I never would have thought of doing that.
I mean, if she starts like, dropping drastically, I might go, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
But doesn't the pump do like 0.05 too? Also?
It does. Yeah. That's what I like about the Medtronic pump.
This is totally doable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, here's a good time to say, again, nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. And I genuinely mean, I'm just thinking of this in a fanciful way. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
But what's the point of it? Just that you don't have to dilute it anymore?
What's the point of diluting it?
I don't, because I was told to. I don't know. I don't ask questions like this. I don't know. I was thinking.
Hilary, you're just making me upset that I didn't marry somebody who's more like susceptible to authority. I'm constantly arguing with my wife about every last thing. She's got a goddamn opinion about everything. You're like, I don't know. Someone told me.
That's like my husband. My husband's like, he's the one who was kind of like spearheading the more lower carb sort of. He's like, why are we feeding her all this crazy? This is crazy what they're telling us, And I was like, I don't know. They're telling this. I'm just following what the doctor told me to do. And he's like, you need to stop it.
If I had to guess about that 50 carb a day at a meal thing, I would, when you said that the first time, what it made me think was they know a ratio in that doctor's office and it's based off of tens.
Yeah, right.
And they were just like, well, she's little, half it, give her 5. Yeah. I just, that really struck me as such an arbitrary thing.
It's so arbitrary. So much of what they had told us, it was They told us to give her 15 carbs to treat her. And she was going low. And I was doing it and I was like, this is crazy. She's 300. And now we treat her with one carb is usually what she needs.
Yes.
It's just, it's unfortunate.
Half sips of a juice box. Just a little bit. Stop. Just like that.
Yes. Yes.
Especially when they're that small. Well, I can tell you that 6 days ago, I met a lovely woman named Patricia. And that's not her real name, but she'll know that that's funny when she hears it. And her son, a few years old, I don't remember now, which will probably make her upset. Little kid, blood sugar's kind of all over the place. I think it took me maybe 12 hours to get the kid's blood sugar stable. And then a couple of more days to teach her how to bolus. And a day after that to tighten up his basals and get them right. And I just unfollowed her yesterday and she's doing great. So and the only thing that's there is she had a willingness to learn something new. And she, I can't believe I'm saying it like this because I don't mean it this way. She listened well. Like she spoke up when I said something crazy, but I told her in the beginning, if I say something that seems completely out of line, please say something because I'm not there. And like, if I'm saying something that just makes you feel like that's not something we should do, then say that. Otherwise, we're going to make some adjustments, turn some knobs, see where he gets high and when he gets low. And then you're going to pre-bolus and learn the difference between the impact carbs have. And that's it. I've never spoken to anybody privately who's picked it up as fast as she did. It was really interesting to watch happen. She even inside of that week fought with her doctor's office because they saw the data and said, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm keeping my kid's blood sugar from spiking all over the place. And they're like, no, that's going to hurt him. And she's like, no, I think you're wrong. Like she fought back. And in a week, it was amazing. Like she's the quickest turnaround ever. It was really interesting. And I'm simultaneously talking to one other person who won't believe what they see. So they just keep throwing themselves into the same problem every 3 hours. And it doesn't matter what I say, they're not going to listen. So I'm probably going to suggest to them that, we shouldn't talk because it's just not worth anybody's time. And that's fear, in my opinion.
Yeah. Fear is a big thing, I think, with the, I think I had that and I still do, but I think it's now meshed into, like we were talking about, it's just easier this way.
Sure.
But I also, she's going to preschool and I started thinking like, well, they can't operate her pump. Like she's going to be going just a few hours. So I don't know, when they're this little, it just seems so much easier because one carb will raise her blood sugar 20 points. So if you get a mistiming of something, which is also easy to do when they're this little, I feel like I have a lot of no's. I feel like I know I'm on the podcast right now, but if I was listening to it, I feel like I know what you would say next almost. It's really funny to be on it. But
what do you think I'm going to say?
I think you would say like, I think that I'm like, there's obvious fear, of just like letting her, like that she would have so much insulin on board and that it's a fear thing and that I should just try it, You're
making me think that therapy is such a scam. So I just get somebody in a room and then charge them money to make them say things out loud they already know, but they haven't said out loud.
Yeah, but it works.
Very helpful.
I don't know. Yeah,
well, let's submit this to your insurance and see if I can get a copay for mental health. And
you should be. I feel like your podcast would be awesome. That it should be submitted to insurance. You should be getting some sort of like payment for this because it really.
I have ads. I'm okay.
The whole timing thing is, I think, the part that's hardest because the protein rises. There's things that come later that can have so much power, and one day they'll be a certain amount and then the next day they won't. That's where I was getting frustrated, I think, at the beginning because I would try something 3 days in a row for breakfast and every day it would be different.
Is there any chance that has something to do with using diluted insulin?
I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I mean, I know a lot of people who use diluted insulin
and it works okay.
Or not a lot. I mean, I know.
Well, what about the idea that the the lower carb options, do they have a lot more protein in them sometimes? Or a lot
I
more
bolus
fat?
a lot for protein.
Yeah.
But that also can be a timing thing. So it's kind of funny because I'm like, I always think about that, like when I deal with like a protein rise that I missed on and I didn't hit it, like, because with Loop, I found that I can't really set out a 3 or like a 4-hour absorption to hit, and it won't hit it hard enough when the protein rise happens like that 2 hours later or an hour and a half later.
Okay.
So I have to put in that she's eating carbs and it's a 3-hour absorption an hour and a half after she eats to get the protein rise not to rise. But if I forget or whatever, I feel like a lot of this has to do with just me being absent-minded and not paying attention. Then it messes up, and then I've missed it.
Are you absent-minded? You don't seem absent-minded.
I'm very absent-minded. Yeah, I am. I get distracted pretty easily. Yeah.
Like shiny stuff,
so.
or like how bad is it?
No, not that bad. But, I just, it's like 2 kids, you start playing and, then you go on to the next thing. And then
I hear you.
It's like, oh, I gave you insulin. That was a pre-bolus I forgot about. It's like,
oops,
that kind of thing.
No,
Oops. It's like, it's just one less thing to worry about.
Well, listen,
I guess the truth comes out. I'm just trying to make my life easier here.
While you were being while you were being reflective just now, what I was really going to say was, it sounds like it's working really great for you and I wouldn't change it. It was just fun to talk about. I mean, there are people with children your child's age at your child's weight that are using pumps that with insulin is not diluted. Was really my only point. But if it's working for you, then whatever. I just don't want you to get to the point where it stops working one day and you're so far off of center that you don't even know how to restart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's interesting because I mean, that's just protocol at the hospital that we're seeing that if they're under 3, they get diluted insulin that you as the parent gets to mix up every couple of weeks. And it's just part of the process. I remember when they told me that, I was like, this is crazy. I can't mix up medicine. What am I, a chemist?
I'm not a chemist.
Like, why are you giving me this, like, more stuff?
What if I forget in the middle of me mixing it up what I'm doing?
My husband did that. Like, he was supposed to be the mixer for me. And I came home and he was like, had crazy eyes. And he's like, I don't know which one I put it in. If it was like diluted, if it's the Humalog or the diluted. And I can't remember. I was like, okay, stop. Just give me, I'm going to do this job. So I do it.
Worst episode of Breaking Bad ever.
Right.
You guys didn't shoot anybody or steal money, did you, while you were at that?
No.
Well, you're in Texas now. You can shoot anybody you want.
Isn't that the truth?
That's not true. You can't just shoot anybody in Texas. I just need to say that, I think.
No.
Well, that's, listen, I appreciate you coming on. And we didn't talk about what I expected we would talk about as much, but I feel like we did at the same time. I feel like we talked about something that happens to a lot of people, especially people who are probably parents of younger children or people who just struggle out the gate. And and when they don't figure out how to use insulin, the next very reasonable step is, well, I'll limit the carbs then. I mean, I think that's completely reasonable. I always just have a feeling that I don't want you to eat any certain way because you feel like you can't figure out the insulin. If you want to eat that way, I think that's really terrific. I genuinely believe that. But I'd be sad if I thought that every day you were making a plate and thinking, I really want an English muffin, but I don't know how to bolus for it. That's all. That's all. And I think you could figure it out because other people have, and they couldn't. And like I said, if you FedEx me that kid, I'll get her some pizza. Get her all set up. But send a note with her because I don't think you can transport children over a state line like that. I'd probably be kidnapping her if that happened. But seriously, like, just don't be, do what you do because you want to do it. That's all. I guess that's what I'm saying. And it's cool to know that there are a lot of low carb options. And it was interesting to hear you go over some things that she eats, that she enjoys a lot. But it was also interesting to hear you say that she has seen other food and been like, hey, mommy, how come I don't have a French fry? So I'm assuming.
I mean, I try to do it when we're out and if she does want something, I feel like that's really reasonable. But if she wasn't happy with options at home, I think I would rethink things. But I think it's just, she also was, when she was diagnosed, she was just starting to eat finger foods because she had been sick for like a month before that, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was just everything was kind of skewed from there.
I think bottles get used up to about like 2 years, right? Isn't that about reasonable, like breastfeeding or bottle feeding?
Yeah. I was breastfeeding at the time, and I did stop that because it seemed really stressful. And then I found out, I mean, I've heard from other people you've had on your podcast that they kept going and they just kind of rolled with it. It was pretty inspiring.
Learn how to bolus for it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think mainly I just want her to feel healthy day to day and for our family to be happy and not, I feel like when she, you know, sort of without knowing if she's definitely going to eat something, to give her so much insulin, it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that at the beginning with Arden?
Yes.
Like,
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I figured out to do is what I tell people to do on the podcast now, which is
the Juicebox.
Or pick an amount of food you just for sure know they're going to eat. And that's your pre-bolus. Even if it's 5 carbs, then pre-bolus 5 carbs.
But what happens when the timing's off on it?
And
then you're dealing with like a 200 or 250.
I don't do that. What are you talking about? So you put in the 5 carbs, right, to get some sort of a pre-bolus. And the second that you see that there's more food going in, you bolus. You don't wait till they're done eating. You go, okay, 5 carbs are in. I've got a nice pre-bolus. Things are moving my direction. Also, keep in mind, my daughter starts a meal at a reasonable blood sugar. It's not like I'm pre-bolusing 5 carbs on a 250 blood sugar. It's
right.
You know, she's more around 100 somewhere, one side or the other of it. So you would get a little bit going, let it work as a pre-bolus, give her the food. As soon as 5 carbs go in and it's clear she's going to keep eating, you bolus for the rest. And that's it. And that way there's enough in there to make up for the timing. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what most people do, I think, who have little kids. And it's interesting. I think I've said it on here once before, but somebody contacted me privately once who had gastroparesis who wanted to pre-bolus. And we talked on the phone for like a half an hour. And at the end I said, like, I'm sorry, I can't think of what to tell you. Like, I don't have any even like half-assed suggestions here for you. I said, except you could pre-bolus the way people pre-bolus for infants. I was like, just give yourself a little. And then once you see that the insulin's impacting the way you expect, then give yourself the rest. Because the problem could be is that they could eat, no digestion happens. And so the glucose is not being pulled up by the blood. Now all that insulin's in there and it's gonna kill you. And so once they see that digestion's happening, then they need the insulin right away. And so they did the same thing.
Yeah, I guess mine's just more of a timing thing because I feel like I want to keep things under 180.
Yeah, no, I know, but you definitely could, but it just takes practice. But all right, so this was good. I enjoyed this. Did you have fun? Did we not talk about anything that we shouldn't have? That we should have?
No, I think everything was good. I've got my whole family in here now. They found me.
Where is Joan? Like, can we like pinch her so she cries so we can hear her or something like that? That's not.
Joan, you want to say hi?
Joan.
She's trying to hear you.
Joan, hello, sweetie. How are you?
Here.
Joan.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi, Joan. How are you?
Let's go make turtle food.
Do you know how good bread is? Oh, she's gone. Never mind.
No.
Turtles eat, and we're gonna fix them some food.
We're gonna go feed the turtles.
Oh, that's really sweet. She sounds sweet.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun.
She's a lot of fun. You didn't say that with a ton of conviction, just so you know.
Well, we've been together for 6 months now, so
yeah, she's fine as far as children go. You know, it's every day, same thing. Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
I hear you. I really do. All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, it was fun.
Cool. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. I'd also like to thank the Contour Next One blood glucose meter and remind you to go to contournext.com/juicebox to learn more about Arden's blood glucose meter. I also want to remind you to find the Facebook group for the podcast, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Please don't forget to leave an amazing review wherever you listen. Tell a friend about the show or a stranger. I don't care if you have to stand up on a bus and start talking about it. You need to do your part, okay? I make the podcast. I get it to you. It doesn't cost you anything. The least you can do is stand up on a city bus where there's about 60 people. I don't want you to waste your time with just 3 or 4 and say, hey, anybody here have diabetes? I got a podcast for you. Then say it out loud. If they seem confused, show them how to use their phone. Really, this is all I'm asking of you. Just public displays of affection for the podcast. And if you're an endocrinologist or someone that works in a practice and you've been suggesting the podcast to people, let me say thank you. That was really very kind of you. I appreciate that. All right, now I'm really done.